Rich millionaire chooses to stay with mistress during wife's emergency surgery. She faces it alone. A single text message in the middle of the night turned Catherine Foster's entire world upside down. Blinking groggily, heart in her throat, she checked her phone and saw her doctor's number glow ominously on the screen. Fear twisted her stomach, for she knew it could only mean bad news. Desperate and in pain, she tried reaching out to the one person she believed would stand by her, her husband. Andrew Lawson's self-made millionaire, pillar of sophistication. Little did she know he was fully occupied elsewhere, in the arms of his mistress. Left alone in her bleakest hour, Catherine braced herself for a harrowing fight she never imagined facing on her own. Catherine Foster was raised in a modest but warm household on the outskirts of Boston. Her parents, Lillian and Mark Foster, were both public school teachers known for their integrity and devotion to community service. Growing up, Catherine saw the quiet heroism of her parents every day, her father tutoring students. After hours, her mother organizing library drives to gather books for needy children. This upbringing instilled in Catherine a deep sense of empathy and altruism. By the time Catherine reached her late teens, her intelligence and drive were clear. She earned a scholarship to a prestigious local university, majoring in social work with a minor in psychology. Friends admired her grace and compassion. She volunteered at nursing homes, participated in neighborhood cleanups, and dedicated weekends to building houses with Habitat for Humanity. Andrew Lawson, brash, ambitious, and charismatic, did not come from the same stable background. He grew up in a cramped apartment in Philadelphia, raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Childhood poverty carved in him a relentless hunger for success. By his mid-20s, after a whirlwind of entrepreneurial ventures, Andrew had launched a software company specializing in supply chain analytics. Profits soared rapidly, and with them came Andrew's transformation from a scrappy nobody into a smooth-talking, wealthy businessman. Catherine and Andrew met at a leadership conference in New York. She was there to learn about community organizing strategies. He was a keynote speaker, preaching the gospel of resilience and calculated risk-taking. Catherine found Andrew's energy magnetic. He seemed unstoppable, a self-made force of nature, and yet he flashed a disarming sincerity when talking about wanting to give back someday. Andrew, for his part, was instantly drawn to Catherine's thoughtful questions, poised demeanor, and quietly radiant smile. Their courtship was swift, but not without real, meaningful moments. Andrew visited Catherine's volunteer projects, surprising her with donations for the homeless shelters she supported. Catherine accompanied Andrew to networking events, marveling at how effortlessly he navigated big-shot investors and high-profile clients. They laughed late into the night about their vastly different childhoods, forging a bond built on mutual respect for each other's determination to overcome adversity. Within a year, Andrew proposed in grand style, a private dinner in a penthouse suite overlooking Manhattan. Catherine, though uncomfortable with extravagance, couldn't deny how her heart soared at the twinkling skyline and Andrew's earnest proposal. She said yes through tears. Believing love had triumphed, she had found a man who valued her empathy and would empower her dreams. Their wedding was a glorious affair at a restored chapel near Catherine's hometown. Everyone from local teachers to tech moguls in Andrew's circle attended, bridging two worlds that rarely intersected. Catherine stood in her simple yet elegant gown, hand in Andrew's, brimming with hope for a future in which both compassion and business savvy could thrive side by side. Yet, as the years passed, the illusions of a perfect union began to crack. Andrew's company, Lawson Analytics, soared to new heights, forcing him into constant boardroom negotiations, global conferences, and a parade of high society galas. Catherine tried her best to keep up, hosting charity events in Andrew's name, often overshadowed by his larger-than-life ambitions. She was proud of his success, even if she missed the days when they could spend hours lost in conversation about community outreach. While Andrew became increasingly preoccupied with accruing more partnerships and more wealth, Catherine found solace in smaller acts of kindness, funding meal programs, mentoring school children, and volunteering at local women's shelters. In public, they remained that photogenic, philanthropic power couple, the self-made millionaire and the benevolent angel by his side. Yet in private, Catherine felt an inexplicable distance forming, like standing on one side of a canyon that widened each time Andrew closed a new deal. Looking back, Catherine would pinpoint fleeting moments, Andrew's dismissive tone when she suggested more philanthropic initiatives, his impatience whenever she hesitated at the cost of their lavish lifestyle that hinted at a deeper shift in their relationship. But at the time, she chalked it up to the stress of business expansions. After all, Andrew had once told her, "Once everything stabilizes, I promise we'll do more charity work together." She believed him wholeheartedly. Little did she know how drastically her faith in him would be tested and how alone she would soon find herself when she needed Andrew the most. Andrew Lawson's meteoric rise in the business world brought new figures into his orbit. One of these was Nicole Holston, a poised, raven-haired public relations strategist who began consulting for Lawson Analytics to revamp its brand image. Nicole was known for her incisive mind, strategic brilliance, and the devastating way she wore a pencil skirt. Her client roster included politicians and celebrities. She was often described as the best weapon money can buy in the PR game. When Andrew introduced Nicole to Catherine at a corporate fundraiser, Catherine felt an odd tingle in her stomach. She couldn't place the cause of her sudden unease. Nicole was polite, even smiling sweetly, but her eyes flickered over Catherine in a way that felt evaluative, cold and almost predatory. Catherine tried to shrug it off. Andrew praised Nicole's talents. "She's a genius at shaping narratives," he told Catherine one evening as they prepared for bed. "With her help, Lawson Analytics can position itself not just as a software giant, but as a thought leader." Catherine, though wary, trusted Andrew's business sense. He'd never steered them wrong financially. While Catherine spent her days planning charity events and meeting with local non-profits, Nicole quickly embedded herself in the upper echelons of Lawson Analytics. She accompanied Andrew to exclusive meetings, brainstorming brand strategies and forging alliances with high-profile investors. Catherine noticed changes in Andrew's demeanor. He picked up jargon from Nicole, peppering conversations with phrases like strategic pivot or brand synergy. He started working later, receiving texts at midnight, always signing off with some curt mention of urgent business. Gradually, Catherine felt her presence in Andrew's world reduced to little more than an accessory. She attended extravagant galas on his arm, smiling for photos that showed them as a glittering success story. But she missed the feeling of being his partner in building a future together. Andrew rarely asked for her opinions anymore. His unwavering focus turned to forging deals, and he occasionally teased Catherine for her naivete about corporate politics. Catherine confided her concerns in her longtime friend, Mona, who suggested that Andrew's intense schedule could be the culprit. "Remember how he was back in Philadelphia?" Mona asked gently. "He's always hungry for the next level. Just talk to him about how you feel." Catherine tried, but each time she brought it up, Andrew brushed it off, promising he'd slow down soon. She didn't want to seem clingy or unsupportive, but the warning signs multiplied. She sometimes smelled a faint, unfamiliar perfume on Andrew's suits. Once, he claimed he was stuck in an all-night meeting at Lawson Analytics, yet the next morning, an acquaintance posted a social media photo showing Andrew and Nicole at a high-end lounge. Catherine told herself that a colleague might have been celebrating a deal, that Nicole was part of the team. She still believed in Andrew's fundamental decency. It seemed unthinkable that he would betray the vows they shared at the chapel. Life, however, has a cruel way of exposing uncomfortable truths. As Andrew soared higher, Catherine felt their marriage slip further from the honest intimacy they once cherished. Some nights she would lie awake, longing for the man who once sat with her at diner counters, discussing big dreams for the world and for their love. She prayed for a sign that they would find their way back to each other, not knowing that a storm was already brewing on the horizon. One day, Catherine decided to drop by the Lawson Analytics office unannounced, carrying homemade pastries for Andrew and his employees. She had done so in the past, receiving warm welcomes from staff. This time, though, the tension was palpable. Assistants exchanged nervous glances as Catherine arrived. Whispers seemed to follow her down the hall. "Mrs. Lawson?" someone murmured. "I didn't realize she was coming." Catherine forced a smile as she knocked on Andrew's door. Silence greeted her. She tried the handle locked. She turned to the nearest assistant, a young woman with anxious eyes. "Is Andrew in a meeting?" Before the assistant could reply, the door opened. Nicole Halston stepped out, smoothing her impeccably tailored blazer. She blinked, looking momentarily startled by Catherine's presence, then offered a cool, professional smile. "Catherine, hello." Andrew just stepped away for a phone call. Inside the office, Catherine spotted half-finished lunch plates and 2 wine glasses on Andrew's desk. The curtains were drawn, the overhead lights off, giving the room a surprisingly intimate atmosphere for a midday meeting. The hair on Catherine's arms prickled with foreboding. Nicole's stance blocked her from walking inside, and the moment felt like trespassing into territory no longer hers. In that disorienting second, Catherine attempted to reconcile the image in front of her. Nicole, calmly adjusting her hair as though no impropriety existed. Andrew's scattered personal effects, a tie tossed over a chair, his laptop on sleep mode, the leftover wine. Everything seemed to scream that she wasn't supposed to be there, that she was intruding. Her heart hammered with a mixture of confusion and dread. Still, she tried to remain civil. I brought pastries," she said softly, "for Andrew and the team." Nicole's lips curled. "That's very thoughtful," she answered, stepping aside as if to let Catherine into the office. But there was an edge to her posture, an almost territorial aura. "Let's leave them in the break room for everyone. Andrew will come by after his phone call." Catherine nodded mechanically, forcing a polite goodbye. She set the pastries in the break room and left the building with a heavy heart. Driving home, tears threatened to blur her vision. She wanted to dismiss the scene as a business lunch gone slightly off course. But the combination of locked doors, half-empty wine glasses, and Nicole's poise over Andrew's domain felt like an invasion. That day, an ache settled in Catherine's chest, an ache that whispered, "You are losing him." Days melted into weeks. Andrew explained away the locked office door by claiming it was standard privacy for sensitive negotiations. He brushed off the wine as a celebratory toast with Nicole after signing a big client. Catherine tried to share her unease, but Andrew only grew defensive, flipping the narrative to suggest she didn't trust him. "You think I'm lying to you?" he snapped one evening. "Nicole is an asset to the company. You should be grateful she's boosting our numbers." For the sake of their marriage, Catherine backed down. Andrew doubled down on brand building with Nicole, flying to overseas expos and hobnobbing with influential billionaires. Whenever Catherine asked to accompany him, Andrew claimed the schedules were too hectic. Meanwhile, Catherine's lonely nights stretched longer. The staff she had once greeted daily at the office now seemed distant, uncertain whether to treat her like the boss's wife or an uninvited guest. The pastries she brought stayed mostly untouched. Through it all, Catherine clung to one last shred of trust. Andrew had never explicitly said he didn't love her anymore. Perhaps stress made him short-tempered. Perhaps she was reading too much into innocent circumstances. She tried to be the supportive wife, refusing to let fleeting moments of suspicion corrode her hope. But suspicions have a way of confirming themselves. Soon Catherine would discover a truth more painful than any of her worst fears. Catherine always prided herself on her resilience, but no amount of fortitude can entirely shield a body from the toll of prolonged stress. She began experiencing unsettling abdominal pains, initially dismissing them as cramps or digestive issues. The discomfort ebbed and flowed, sometimes vanishing for days before returning with a sharper edge. Her mother, Lillian Foster, noticed Catherine holding her side one afternoon. "You're wincing," Lillian said gently, placing a hand on Catherine's shoulder. "Are you all right?" "I'm sure it's nothing," Catherine murmured. She had a high threshold for pain, always focusing on the well-being of others before her own. She carried on with her volunteer commitments, ignoring the increasing bouts of nausea and intermittent fever that occasionally flared in the evenings. Eventually, the pain escalated. Catherine found herself doubled over one morning, pale and shivering. Alarmed, Lillian rushed her to a local clinic. The doctor performed a quick exam and recommended an ultrasound. "It could be your appendix, or maybe an ovarian cyst," he said. "We need more imaging to be sure." That afternoon, Catherine texted Andrew, "Hey, not feeling well, at the clinic for some scans. Just letting you know." She tried not to show alarm, but a part of her desperately wanted him to drop everything and come support her. His reply came hours later, tied up in a meeting. "Let me know what the docs say. No promise to come by, no reassurance beyond a perfunctory concern." Catherine's heart sank. Still, she tried to remain optimistic. The scans were inconclusive, but the doctor scheduled more tests for the following week. He advised Catherine to monitor her symptoms closely. If the pain intensified or a fever spiked, she was to go straight to the emergency department. Catherine shared the news with Andrew that night. He nodded distractedly while scanning emails on his phone. "You'll be fine," he said. "Just get the second test done and we'll figure it out. Nicole's lined up a big investor pitch, so I'll be away for a few days. You got this, right?" Dumbfounded, Catherine nodded. The next morning, Andrew left on a flight to San Francisco with Nicole to meet a venture capital group. Catherine, suppressing her disappointment, tried to rest at home. The pain was mercurial, it faded for a day, then came roaring back. She resolved not to panic prematurely. After all, Andrew had said everything would be fine, but fate rarely unfolds on our timetable. On the second night of Andrew's trip, Catherine woke at 2 a.m. to a fierce stabbing sensation in her lower abdomen. The intensity nearly made her faint. Sweat drenched her pajamas. Gasping, she reached for her phone, heart pounding so hard she could barely think. She tried to call Andrew, no answer. She called a taxi instead, each minute an eternity. By the time she arrived at the ER of Mount Sinai Hospital, her vision swam with the agony. Nurses guided Catherine to an exam bed, rushing through triage. Blood tests were conducted immediately. An alarmed resident surgeon glanced at the imaging results. "Her white cell count is through the roof," he muttered to the attending physician. "Possible appendicitis with risk of rupture." Catherine watched in dizzying panic as they prepared her for possible emergency surgery. She fumbled for her phone again, texting Andrew, "I'm at Mount Sinai. Doctors think I need urgent surgery. Please come." No response. Meanwhile, nurses administered the fourth fluids, the beep of her heart rate monitor filling the small curtain space. Catherine tried to steady her breathing. She thought of Andrew's old vow, "I'll always have your back." Where was he now? With each wave of pain, tears threatened to spill. She felt alone, frightened, and utterly abandoned by the person she needed the most. An hour passed, then two. The doctors decided surgery could not be delayed. Catherine texted Andrew again, voice trembling as she left him a voicemail. "Please, they're taking me in now." The phone remained silent. The last thing Catherine remembered before the anesthetic pulled her into unconsciousness was the cold, fluorescent glare of the operating room lights and the painful reality that her husband wasn't there. When Catherine regained consciousness, the world felt blurry and disjointed. A throbbing pain radiated from her abdomen, though dulled by medication. She blinked against the bright lights, nurse voices echoing in the corridor. Gradually, she realized she was in a post-op recovery unit, and the fourth drip attached to her arm. Her first thought was Andrew. Surely, by now, he would be here, waiting anxiously. She scanned the small bay, only sterile walls, machines, and a nurse tidying instruments. No sign of her husband. The nurse approached with a kind smile. "Miss S. Lawson, your surgery went well. Your appendix was indeed inflamed, close to rupturing. You're lucky you came in when you did." "Thank you," Catherine managed, her throat dry. "Has my husband shown up?" The nurse's smile wavered. "Not yet." "Do you want us to try calling him again?" Tears pricked at Catherine's eyes. "He wasn't even here hours later for something that could have killed her." Weakly, she nodded. The nurse left and returned a few minutes later with a sympathetic look. It went straight to voicemail again. Trembling, Catherine asked for her phone, praying for a missed call, a text, anything. Instead, she found a fresh torment. Andrew had posted on social media just an hour ago. A glamorous photo of him and Nicole in a sleek hotel lounge, captioned, "Closing deals, seizing the future." They each held flutes of champagne, smiling at the camera, obviously carefree and celebrating well past midnight in San Francisco. Catherine felt as if a bottomless pit opened inside her. Shock warred with heartbreak. Andrew had read none of her messages, ignored her calls, and instead spent his night reveling in success with Nicole. She lay there, tears sliding silently across her cheeks, trying to comprehend how the man who once pledged his undying devotion could so casually dismiss her life or death emergency. Over the next 2 days, Catherine recovered alone. Hospital staff, seeing no family visitors, were extra attentive, offering small comforts, warm blankets, frequent check-ins, gentle smiles. A few kind souls asked if she needed help contacting relatives. Catherine's parents were out of state, so she asked the hospital to call her mother's phone, but it went to voicemail as well. All Catherine could do was wait, hurting physically and emotionally. Finally, on the evening of her second post-op day, Andrew called. The moment Catherine saw his name flash on the screen, she answered with desperate relief. "Andrew, oh my God," his voice was strangely calm, even distant. "Catherine, hey, you doing all right?" She swallowed hard. "I had an emergency appendectomy. I've been in the hospital for days." "Where have you been?" Her words trembled with hurt. A pause. "I told you I was on a business trip," Andrew replied. "Couldn't get away from critical investor meetings. I left you a text, or maybe I forgot to press send. Anyway, you're fine, right?" "The operation was successful?" Catherine's indignation surged. "I'm alone here. You have no idea what I've been through. You never called, never replied. And you're partying with Nicole while I'm in surgery?" Andrew sighed, sounding impatient. "First, it wasn't a party. We secured a major contract, which required some late-night networking. You know how these things go. Look, I'll be back tomorrow. The doctor said you'd be discharged soon, right? We can talk then." Before she could protest further, he ended the call. Catherine stared at the phone, heart pounding with fury and heartbreak. Any illusions that Andrew merely slipped up or misunderstood were shattered. His priorities were crystal clear. He had chosen the Mistress, though not yet admitted as such over his wife, in her most vulnerable moment. Catherine never felt more alone or betrayed. Catherine remained in the hospital another night. Surgeons wanted to monitor potential post-surgical complications, ensuring her fever subsided fully. In the endless hours of her hospital bed, she replayed Andrew's dismissive words, each memory fueling her anguish. How could the man who once promised to protect her be so cold? She scrolled through her phone messages, noticing how supportive her circle of friends was. Many had sent "get well soon" texts as soon as they heard. But she hadn't told them the magnitude of Andrew's neglect. In part, she felt embarrassed, as though this betrayal were a personal failure. She told only her closest friend, Mona, who immediately offered to fly in. Catherine, however, told her to wait until she was discharged. No need to add more chaos. By noon the next day, the doctor approved Catherine to leave the hospital. She collected her discharge papers, instructions for medication, and scheduled a follow-up appointment. Hugging the hospital staff who had been so kind, she then stepped outside to hail a taxi. Snow flurries drifted across the sidewalk, the grey winter sky matching her somber mood. No Andrew to pick her up. No warm coat wrapped around her shoulders. She had to lean on her own determination, the same resilience that once inspired her to help others. When she arrived at their upscale condo, an opulent place in Beacon Hill that Andrew insisted they buy for prestige, Catherine struggled up the steps, wincing from the post-surgical pain. Inside, the lights were off, the air stale. She called out for Andrew, hoping he might have made it back before her. Only silence greeted her. That night, racked with discomfort, Catherine had to forage for a quick meal in the kitchen, her body still frail. She gingerly reheated soup, tears rolling down her cheeks as she faced the stark truth. Andrew had chosen not to be with her, not even in the aftermath of a near tragedy. She collapsed onto the couch, curling around the hot soup, the ache in her abdomen mirrored by the deeper ache in her heart. Hours later, she awoke to the sound of the front door opening. Andrew stepped in, looking crisp in a tailored coat, clearly coming from yet another event. Catherine sat up, blinking in the dimly lit living room. Their eyes met his with a hint of guilt, hers with quiet devastation. "You're back," she said weakly. He exhaled, setting his briefcase on the marble entry table. "Yeah, I had to stop by the office first," he murmured, removing his coat. "How are you feeling?" Catherine let out a hollow laugh. "How do you think I'm feeling, Andrew? I was operated on alone. I came home alone. And you," her voice trailed off, tears threatening again. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I said I'd come home as soon as I could. The timing was just unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Catherine repeated, her anger sharpening. "You refused to leave your mistress or the deal to see me at the hospital." He scowled. "Nicole is not my mistress. She's a colleague. Don't jump to conclusions." Her exhausted rage boiled over. "Then why do you spend every waking moment with her instead of me? Why do you ignore my calls during surgery? The pictures, Andrew. Don't treat me like a fool." Andrew's jaw tightened. For a moment, it seemed he would deny everything, but his eyes flickered with something akin to shame. "We can talk about this later," he muttered, turning away. "You need rest." Catherine nearly threw the soup bowl at him. Instead, she forced herself to remain calm, pressing a hand to her bandaged stomach. "I won't be a doormat, Andrew. If there's something going on, you owe me the truth." But Andrew was already climbing the stairs, refusing to engage. The final click of the bedroom door shutting felt like a coffin lid on the intimacy they once shared. Catherine sank back onto the couch, tears sliding down her cheeks, her world splintered. She had never felt so utterly alone, recovering from invasive surgery, battered by heartbreak, unsure how to navigate the darkness that had consumed her marriage. Over the following days, Catherine rested as best she could, taking her prescribed pain medications and antibiotic regimen. Andrew, for his part, remained a fleeting presence in the condo. He claimed that the biggest deal of the year demanded constant attention. Morning or evening, he breezed in and out with impeccable suits and vague explanations. Catherine's attempts to draw him into a real conversation about their marriage were met with cold deflection. Each night, she lay awake in bed, feeling the emptiness on Andrew's side, wondering if he was with Nicole. The entire ordeal seemed surreal. Just months ago, they had still appeared at charitable events as a loving, unstoppable team. She realized with a pang that she hadn't seen her own husband for more than a few minutes at a time. The catastrophic distance fueled her resolve. She deserved answers. Catherine confronted Andrew one early morning when she found him in the kitchen, hastily brewing coffee. "We need to talk," she said, voice firm despite her bandaged stomach. He sighed, not meeting her gaze. "About what?" "About your affair," she stated. "Because if you're not with me anymore, I need to know." "I won't be strung along." Andrew's face hardened. "I told you, Nicole isn't my mistress." He closed the coffee maker, his tone growing defensive. "Yes, she and I have a close working relationship. We travel together, meet investors, entertain them. That's part of the job. Why can't you understand this is business?" Catherine's frustration boiled. "Business doesn't explain ignoring me in the hospital, or the wine glasses in your locked office, or the social media posts of you two at midnight. You're lying to me, Andrew." He set his cup down with a clank, swirling with anger. "If you weren't so suspicious, maybe we'd be happier. I have enough stress from the company." Hot tears stung Catherine's eyes. "Don't gaslight me," she said, voice trembling. "You chose to let me suffer alone, and now you're blaming me for noticing?" Andrew opened his mouth, then shut it, struggling for control. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he finally said, quieter. "There's a lot riding on these deals, my entire expansion plan. And Nicole's been supportive. Supportive in a way I can't be." Catherine pressed. She wanted him to confess, to release her from the torture of not knowing. He hesitated. The silence spoke volumes. "Look, Catherine, we've grown apart, okay? I don't want to hurt you, but my life is more complicated than you realize. Nicole invests in me, in my ambitions. I've never felt so unstoppable." Tears trickled down Catherine's cheeks. He was basically admitting that Nicole played a role Catherine used to fill, someone who believed in him wholeheartedly. "And what about me?" she asked shakily. "I believed in you from day one." Andrew sighed. "That was different. We were different then. I'm not saying this is entirely your fault, but you haven't kept pace with how my world is evolving." His words sliced deeper than a scalpel. Catherine tried to respond, but her throat locked up. Without another glance, Andrew grabbed his coffee and left the condo. She stood alone in the silent kitchen, understanding that their marriage was on the brink of collapse. No matter how many tears she shed or how many pleas she made, Andrew was already gone in spirit, and it shattered her. Despite Andrew's betrayal, Catherine still longed for the life they had built. She recalled the early days of their courtship, how they'd talk until dawn, forging plans to combine philanthropy with business. She remembered how Andrew once fervently promised that together they would revolutionize corporate ethics, supporting charitable causes worldwide. Where had that idealistic young man gone? Fearing the finality of a divorce, Catherine tried to salvage the relationship. She initiated couples therapy, scheduling an appointment with a highly recommended therapist named Dr. Morales, renowned for working with high-profile clients in Boston. Andrew agreed to go, albeit reluctantly. For one fleeting session, Catherine felt a glimmer of hope as Dr. Morales guided them to discuss the resentment and distance building between them. Andrew admitted he felt overshadowed by Catherine's moral compass, that he had to constantly measure up to her selfless worldview. Catherine, in turn, shared her loneliness and sense of abandonment. When Dr. Morales asked about Nicole, Andrew deflected, saying only that Catherine was misinterpreting a professional relationship. Catherine tried to believe him, clinging to the possibility that maybe this was a midlife crisis, not a full-blown affair. However, Andrew's momentary willingness vanished quickly. Over the next weeks, he missed therapy appointments, always claiming urgent travel or unexpected business dinners. Catherine's texts about scheduling future sessions went unanswered. Dr. Morales gently suggested Catherine begin individual therapy, hinting that Andrew might not be committed to saving the marriage. In the midst of this emotional upheaval, Catherine's philanthropic network asked if she would spearhead a new charitable initiative. They wanted to establish a small, free clinic for low-income families in an underprivileged Boston neighborhood, an endeavor right up Catherine's alley. At first, she hesitated, feeling physically drained from surgery and emotionally battered from Andrew's infidelity. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that burying herself in a meaningful project might be the only way to reclaim her sense of purpose. She met with volunteers, local doctors, and city officials, using her organizational prowess to start building the clinic framework. Every success in the clinic planning lifted her spirits, reminding her that she had a life beyond Andrew's shadow. She devoted hours to fundraising, scanning budgets, and meeting with potential donors. Andrew, for his part, was conspicuously absent from the clinic initiative. Catherine tried inviting him to the launch fundraiser. He promised to check his calendar, but never actually arrived. Instead, Catherine spotted more social media posts of Andrew and Nicole smiling from posh restaurants in Chicago, London, or wherever the next big investment meeting took them. Friends began sending Catherine uneasy messages. "Hey, are you okay? Saw another photo of Andrew with that PR woman." Catherine responded politely that things were complicated. Then, in a cruel twist, Nicole Halston herself donated a sizable sum to Catherine's clinic fund, her name appearing on the donor list. The donation arrived with a short note typed on Lawson Analytics stationery, praising the noble cause Catherine championed. The goal of Nicole to parade her generosity while likely sharing Andrew's bed left Catherine feeling nauseous. But Catherine pressed forward. In quiet moments, she prayed for clarity, for the strength to face whatever came next. She still held out a sliver of hope that Andrew might realize what he was losing, the loyal partner who had been by his side long before the business soared. Unfortunately, illusions rarely stand against the cold, hard truth. Sometimes love is not enough to conquer someone's all-consuming ambition and selfishness. Everything shifted when Catherine stumbled upon undeniable proof of Andrew's affair. It happened one Saturday afternoon while Andrew was away on business. Catherine was tidying the condo, mildly cathartic therapy, when she decided to empty the trash bin in Andrew's home office. Inside, she found a crumpled receipt for a lavish jewelry purchase at an upscale boutique. The item in question was a diamond bracelet worth tens of thousands of dollars. Curious and unsettled, Catherine rummaged further, discovering a second piece of paper, an envelope from that same jewelry store, containing a short thank you note addressed to Mr. Lawson. The note read, "So thrilled you chose our store for Nicole's special gift. We hope she adores the diamond piece, an exquisite symbol of your appreciation. Thank you for shopping with us." Catherine's heart pounded. Andrew had never mentioned buying her a new piece of jewelry, and the store's note left zero doubt as to the recipient, Nicole. This was not some ambiguous transaction. Andrew had spent a small fortune to shower Nicole with diamonds, presumably as a token of more than just professional gratitude. Hands shaking, Catherine sank onto Andrew's office chair. Tears threatened to blur her vision. She stared at the mocking letters that spelled out the final blow to her marriage. All the half-lies and evasions crystallized into grim fact. Andrew was not only neglecting her, but actively romancing Nicole. In a haze of heartbreak, She clutched the receipt and note, suddenly unsure how to proceed. Part of her wanted to fling them at Andrew's face, demanding an explanation. Another part felt numb, as though she were floating outside her own body, watching everything unravel. She tried to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. Perhaps he was on a plane or simply ignoring her. That evening, Catherine's friend Mona came over. Catherine showed her the incriminating evidence. Mona's fury was visceral. "I know you wanted to believe in him, Kath," Mona said, hugging her. "But this is as blatant as it gets. You don't deserve this." Catherine crumpled with sobs in Mona's arms. She had clung to hope for so long, hope that Andrew was just misguided, that Nicole was a passing fancy or an innocent colleague. But the diamond bracelet spelled out the truth of his betrayal in sparkling clarity. Mona urged her to pack some clothes and stay at Mona's apartment for a while. "Don't let him manipulate you again," she insisted. "You're too vulnerable right now." Yet Catherine couldn't bring herself to leave. She felt an odd sense of rightful ownership over the home she'd shaped with Andrew's money. Yes, but also her love, her efforts. Why should she be the one to flee? Instead, she resolved to confront him head on the moment he returned. A line had been crossed. She deserved at least the respect of an honest confession. The hardest part was that a piece of her still loved him, or the memory of who he was. Despite everything, Catherine lamented how the man she once adored, the man who overcame humble beginnings with unstoppable drive, had devolved into someone unrecognizable. She also knew that heartbreak wouldn't kill her. She'd survived the surgery alone, and she could survive the truth now. And so, Catherine waited, forging steely resolve. She would not cry when he walked in. She would not beg or cling. She would demand the dignity of a real conversation. If Andrew refused, well, then she knew what came next, a path of heartbreak leading toward inevitable separation. The weight of that choice pressed on her chest, but she stood firm, determined not to become a silent casualty in her own marriage. When Andrew returned on Sunday, it was past midnight. Catherine sat in the living room, lights low, holding the damning note in her lap. She watched him enter, suit jacket slung over one arm, phone in hand. The tension in the air was suffocating. He paused, taken aback by the sight of her awake. "Catherine, it's late. Why are you up?" She stood slowly, crossing the distance between them. Without a word, she handed him the note and receipt. Andrew's expression shifted from confusion to alarm, and then into stony silence. For a moment, neither spoke. At last, Catherine broke the hush, her voice quiet but resolute. "I found these in your office trash." Andrew inhaled, jaw clenching. "I can explain." She lifted her chin, eyes brimming with both sorrow and determination. "Then explain, Andrew. Tell me why you're buying Nicole a diamond bracelet that costs more than some people make in a year." He swallowed, failing to muster a convincing lie. Instead, he muttered, "Catherine, you know how important Nicole is to Lawson Analytics. She's closed deals worth millions. That bracelet was a bonus and incentive." Catherine's anger flared. "Don't insult me. I've known you for years. You don't throw tens of thousands at an incentive. This is a token of affection." Andrew scowled, tossing the receipt on the coffee table. "Fine. Maybe it is. Maybe Nicole and I have gotten close. So what? You and I have grown distant. We rarely see eye to eye. She understands my ambition. She supports me without the guilt trips." Her breath caught in her throat. Hearing him admit it so bluntly was like a punch to the gut. Tears threatened, but she forced them down, clenching her fists at her sides. "So you chose her? Over me? Over our marriage, your vows?" His eyes flicked away. "It's not that simple. I never wanted to hurt you, but this is the direction my life is going. I told you, there's a lot at stake. Nicole is a big part of that." Catherine stared at him in disbelief. "And my emergency surgery?" My calls in the middle of the night, alone in the hospital, did that matter at all? He had the gall to look annoyed, as though she were scolding him for a minor oversight. I told you my schedule was insane. I couldn't just bail. We were finalizing major contracts that took months to secure. She fought the urge to scream. In that moment, clarity hit. Andrew was gone, consumed by ambition, blinded by a new romance with Nicole, the PR strategist, who saw him as a stepping stone to bigger, shinier deals. Catherine felt her heartbreak harden into something else, an unwavering sense of self-respect that refused to let her grovel. She squared her shoulders. This can't continue. Either you end whatever you have with Nicole and commit to rebuilding trust with me, or we're done. Andrew looked at her, a flicker of something close to regret in his eyes. But it was overshadowed by defiance. I need more time to think, he muttered, brushing past her. Don't push me into a corner. She watched him ascend the stairs, the echo of his footsteps filling the silent condo. Catherine sank onto the sofa, tears escaping at last, though not from helplessness this time. They were tears of mourning for a once beautiful bond. She knew this was their point of no return. Andrew's half-hearted excuses, his refusal to choose her, left no room for doubt. In the coming days, Catherine would have to make decisions that might break her own heart further. Yet she resolved to protect her dignity no matter how the chips fell. She lay awake that night, replaying his casual confession, recognizing that he was willing to trade their love for a fleeting, glamorized vision of success and passion with Nicole. And that, she told herself, was no marriage at all. A week later, Andrew dropped another bombshell. He informed Catherine that he was moving out for a trial separation, claiming he needed space to focus on the expansion of Lawson Analytics. Catherine felt her blood turn cold. The betrayal was one thing, but the audacity to walk away as if he was the victim astounded her. We both need some air, he explained matter-of-factly. I'll get an apartment downtown. You can stay here. It's only fair. Catherine clenched her fists to stop from shaking. You're running from the consequences of your affair, she whispered. Don't pretend this is fair. Andrew shrugged, looking slightly pained. What do you want me to do, Catherine? You said I had to make a choice. Well, I'm choosing to figure out what I want without constant fighting. Her heart hurt so fiercely that she felt physically ill. She gazed around their meticulously decorated condo marble countertops, designer furniture, photographs from their wedding day in small frames that now felt like relics of a lost world. Fine, she managed. Leave then. I'm not going to beg you to stay. That evening, Andrew packed a suitcase, some suits, and personal belongings. Catherine watched in a numb daze as he walked out without a backward glance. The door clicked shut, echoing in the hollow space he left behind. She collapsed onto the couch, hugging a throw pillow tight to her chest as tears streamed down her face. She had spent years supporting Andrew's dreams. Now he was discarding her like an inconvenient accessory. A swirl of grief and anger threatened to consume her. Mona, insisted Catherine, see a divorce attorney. He can't just walk away and keep living large with his mistress, Mona exclaimed. You have rights. Catherine hesitated, reluctant to accept the finality that legal proceedings would bring. But after a few nights of insomnia, she realized Mona was right. Andrew was not returning to work things out. He had effectively chosen Nicole and a life of ambition. Catherine had to safeguard herself emotionally, legally, and financially. She booked an appointment with a reputed family law firm. The attorney, Miss Carver, was a sharp woman with a reassuring warmth. After hearing Catherine's story, Miss Carver frowned deeply. He left you during an emergency, is openly consorting with a mistress, and now seeks atrial separation with no accountability? You have a clear path to a fault-based divorce, especially under Massachusetts law. We should also investigate the marital assets to ensure he doesn't hide anything. Catherine felt a wave of nausea at the prospect of legal battles, but Miss Carver's calm professionalism steadied her. We can also consider a no-fault approach, but given his behavior, you have leverage here. He's betrayed your trust in every possible way. That night, Catherine drafted a letter to Andrew, explaining she'd consulted counsel. She offered him a chance for an amicable resolution if he met certain conditions ending the affair, returning home, attending therapy faithfully. But deep down, she doubted he would comply. She cried after hitting's end, feeling as though she were burying the last hopes for reconciliation. Andrew's response arrived by email at 3 a.m. It was curt, dismissive. "I can't commit to that right now. Let's handle this civilly. We'll talk about property and finances soon." Catherine stared at the screen, heartbreak mingling with relief. The illusions were officially dead. She had every right to move forward with a divorce, to demand her fair share, to reclaim her life. As grief enveloped her, she thought of the kindly nurses at Mount Sinai Hospital, of her philanthropic projects, of the many times she had been there for strangers in crisis. Now she had to be there for herself. Andrew's departure was not as seamless as he likely hoped. Without Catherine's steady presence, handling social obligations and philanthropic networking, cracks surfaced in his carefully curated image. Rumors of an affair with Nicole spread beyond the hush of office corridors. Some employees at Lawson Analytics expressed disgust, especially those who admired Catherine's charitable spirit. Worse yet for Andrew, the new expansions ran into unexpected turbulence. A key investor pulled out, citing doubts about the company's direction. Andrew scrambled to reassure other stakeholders, but the scandal swirling around his personal life began to leak into his professional reputation. Nicole, once the fearless PR champion, struggled to maintain positive spin when tabloids hinted at Andrew's infidelity as an open secret. At the condo, Catherine discovered letters from banks addressed to Andrew, referencing large lines of credit used for expansions. She suspected that Andrew had leveraged significant debt to fund his ambitious moves. Concerned about potential liability, Catherine forwarded the letters to Miss Carver, who recommended caution. If Andrew's ventures sank, it could affect Catherine's financial security unless they established a clear separation of assets. But Catherine felt a strange mixture of pity and contempt for Andrew. Part of her still recalled how he rose from humble beginnings, how proud she used to be of his determination. Yet the man who once overcame adversity with integrity now stooped to betrayal and manipulations. Catherine saw in the letters the recklessness that came from chasing infinite success. Perhaps he had soared too close to the sun, trusting Nicole's flattery more than his moral compass. In the midst of legal complexities, Catherine's personal strength began to rebound. Mona stayed with her for several days, helping clean the condo of Andrew's presence. They boxed up some of his leftover items, dropping them off at Andrew's new apartment building. Catherine found solace in her philanthropic work, forging ahead with the free clinic. She poured her heartbreak into constructive action, coordinating fundraisers, rallying volunteers, finalizing architectural plans. The day she signed the lease for the clinic's building, Catherine felt a surge of pride, reminiscent of the optimism she once shared with Andrew. Standing outside the modest structure, destined to become a haven for underserved families, she realized that heartbreak, while crippling, could also be a catalyst for rebirth. That night, she lit a candle in the empty condo, whispering a prayer of gratitude for her life, her healing body, and her capacity to do good. Andrew's choice had thrown her into turmoil, but it also gave her a clarity of purpose. She was not defined by being Miss S. Lawson. She was Catherine Survivor, philanthropist, woman of dignity, forging her own path. As the divorce proceedings advanced, Andrew's well-publicized romance with Nicole took a darker turn. The synergy that once electrified them faded under stress. Investors raised eyebrows at how Nicole's presence overshadowed normal business protocols. A few whispered that she manipulated Andrew to sign deals primarily benefiting her own PR firm. Andrew, desperate to sustain Lawson Analytics' expansion, appeared increasingly defensive. He traveled incessantly, trying to salvage alliances. Then came a scandalous leak. Someone inside Lawson Analytics revealed that Nicole had engaged in undisclosed self-dealing, steering marketing contracts to a shell company she partially owned. The board demanded an investigation. Andrew, reeling from the allegations, discovered that Nicole had indeed exploited their relationship to line her pockets, forging invoices for inflated services. Worse yet, the dealings threatened to tarnish Lawson Analytics' brand. High-profile clients threatened to cut ties unless Andrew took swift action. Feeling betrayed and cornered, Andrew confronted Nicole, but she was unapologetic, claiming Andrew owed her for helping him ascend the corporate ladder. She intimated that if she went down, she had proof of Andrew's complicity that could ruin him too. Terrified, Andrew realized he'd tethered himself to a cunning partner who wouldn't hesitate to sink him. Catherine learned of the fiasco from news articles speculating about the meltdown at Lawson Analytics. She felt a wave of shock tempered with a grim sense of inevitability. Andrew's downfall was unfolding in real time, his business empire threatened by the very woman for whom he had abandoned his wife. She found no joy in his suffering, but she recognized the cruel symmetry of karma. Andrew had chosen an alliance born of ego and greed, turning his back on the faithful spouse who truly loved him. Now the costs were piling high. In the midst of the corporate chaos, Andrew emailed Catherine, sounding uncharacteristically subdued. He asked if they could talk no lawyers, no intermediaries. Catherine hesitated. Months ago, she might have jumped at the chance to reconcile, but the pain of his betrayal still coursed through her veins. Instead, she consulted Miss Carver, who advised caution. Yet Catherine, curious, agreed to meet in a public cafe, resolving to maintain her boundaries. When Andrew arrived, she barely recognized him. His once confident posture drooped, dark shadows under his eyes. He spoke in a hushed tone, admitting he was in over his head, that Nicole had manipulated him, and that he'd realized too late he'd made a terrible mistake. Catherine listened, quietly composed, letting him share his regrets. He apologized for missing her surgery, for lying, for not valuing her. He insisted he'd been blinded by ambition. A pang of old love tugged at Catherine's heart, but she recalled the nights she spent in anguish, alone in a hospital bed. She remembered the diamond bracelet for Nicole, the dismissive excuses, the scorn he'd shown. She let him finish, then replied softly, "I appreciate your apology, Andrew, but you've broken my trust in ways that can't be undone." He looked like a man about to beg. "Could we maybe start over? I don't want to lose everything. You mean more to me than you know." Tears pricked Catherine's eyes, but she stood firm. "You already lost me, Andrew. I won't let you wound me again." She rose from the table, leaving him slumped in regretful silence. For the first time in months, she felt free. Following that final meeting, Andrew slid deeper into turmoil. Nicole severed ties with Lawson Analytics, not wanting to be entangled in legal battles. The board forced Andrew to step down as CEO amid accusations of mismanagement. In a matter of weeks, the once glorious empire of Andrew Lawson cracked beneath the weight of bad decisions and shattered trust. Meanwhile, Catherine's path glowed brighter. The free clinic launched with fanfare. Doctors, nurses, and volunteers came together to provide accessible healthcare for those who could not afford it. Catherine poured her soul into the clinic, greeting patients with empathy, forging partnerships with local donors. Media outlets praised her philanthropic passion, ironically contrasting her work with the public meltdown of her estranged husband's business. Catherine, however, remained humble, focusing on the lives she could impact positively. Legally, Miss Carver ensured Catherine received a fair settlement. Because Andrew had gambled heavily on expansions that turned sour, his net worth plummeted, but Miss Carver safeguarded Catherine from the worst of the fallout by negotiating that certain assets remain with her. She ended up with the condo and enough resources to fund the clinic for years to come. Andrew, left with debts and tarnished credibility, relocated to a modest rental. The glitz of his former lifestyle evaporated. One day, Catherine walked through the condo, reflecting on how quiet it felt without Andrew's footsteps. Yet she felt peace. She placed the wedding photographs in a small trunk, not out of bitterness, but out of acceptance that the life they once shared was gone. Through heartbreak, she'd uncovered a deeper sense of her own identity, strong, compassionate, unstoppable in her convictions. As weeks passed, Catherine found solace in new friendships. A physician named Dr. Allen, who volunteered regularly at her clinic, asked her out for coffee. She initially hesitated, but his gentle kindness and genuine admiration for her work gradually chipped away at her wariness. She discovered that opening her heart again did not betray her past, it honored her capacity to love. Divorce proceedings concluded with a final decree. Catherine breathed a sigh of relief, stepping out of the courthouse with Mona by her side. She looked up at the sky, feeling the crisp Boston air on her face, the sun breaking through grey clouds. No victory felt as sweet as the realization that she had survived betrayal, found her footing, and emerged more determined to make a difference in the world. In the following months, Catherine continued to expand the free clinic, eventually partnering with other charitable organizations. She became a speaker at community events, sharing her story not as a cautionary tale, but as an example of resilience, that even the deepest hurts can serve as catalysts for personal growth. She overcame the heartbreak that once shattered her, forging a new life of purpose and compassion. Andrew tried to contact her one last time, sending a letter that spoke of regret and longing. Catherine felt a twinge of sorrow reading it, but she recognized it was the sorrow of empathy, not longing for him. She put the letter away, focusing on what lay ahead, a future filled with hope, love, and the unstoppable brilliance of a woman who refused to be defined by someone else's failings. Not every storm ends in ruins. Sometimes it clears the way for a sunrise of deeper understanding and renewed purpose. Catherine faced a betrayal that could have broken her spirit, a millionaire husband who neglected her in her darkest hour, turning to a mistress instead of standing faithfully by her side. Yet from the wreckage of that heartbreak, she emerged stronger, committing herself to a clinic that transforms lives, forging new bonds built on honesty and respect, and rediscovering the power of her own determination. If this narrative resonates with you, if you've ever felt alone, betrayed, or unsure how to rebuild, take inspiration from Catherine's journey. We can rise above deceit and despair, pouring our energy into something meaningful. Now, let's ensure more people hear this story of resilience. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so that uplifting tales of renewal reach those who need them most. Our greatest comeback often blooms where we once felt most defeated.